Hi, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. This is Nguyen. And with my channel, I'm a success coach and I want to empower women to be a leader in their professional and personal life. And with that, I always bring in an amazing guest speaker. And today I have a pleasure speaking with Dr. Janan Sarwar, and she will share her journey. And with that, before I start, I'm going to get her introduce herself.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Anne, for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I am Janan Sarwar. I live in Louisville, Kentucky currently. I am a pharmacist, but I mostly work as a publisher. I'm an expert in all things books. I love to speak about it, and I'm a mother of 3 young daughters.
Well, thank you for being here today, especially to break away from the little ones. So we'll make it quick and, well, not I would say quick because your journey is so interesting. I want everyone to hear how you get to where you are now. A first question I would say is, can you share your journey and the key turning points in your career and what led you to where you are today?
Absolutely. Well, I introduced myself first as a pharmacist. So I guess I'll share, how did I even choose pharmacy? As a young child, I'm a daughter of immigrants, and it was important to do something in the healthcare field to help others. And I was always interested in helping others, influenced by my parents to do so. My mother is a doctor from Bangladesh, and my father studied engineering. So I thought, okay, I can do something in the sciences. I always had a creative side, but I wanted to pursue something in the sciences. Unfortunately, while I was in my undergraduate career, I had an extreme drug reaction. And I was taking a Bactrim that had sulfa. I think that's the component I was allergic to. And I took a azithromycin medication. The two of them together led me into the intensive care unit. I was out of school, undergrad, in my sophomore year for 2 weeks recovering. And steroids helped me get better. But
Wow.
essentially, that's actually what inspired me to choose pharmacy. I thought, hey, I'm really curious about how this happened to me, how just taking a medication that I was told by a doctor to take, how that could impact my life. And it was very important and traumatic as well. So that impacted.
Absolutely. I want to say you're the first one I hear about the sofa allergy, like real patient. I've seen it in case studies and like learn about it, but you're the first one I knew that actually allergic to Bactrim and went to the ICU for that matter. So
Yes, I was at Vanderbilt University for the ICU. I went to Knoxville, Tennessee for undergrad, so it's about 3 hours away. And I remember when I was first admitted, I had to sign a release. My parents and I signed a release so that people could photograph my skin because of it was like a Stevens-Johnson syndrome like drug reaction. And they're like, we usually don't see it in the skin tone. Do you mind if we can
so they probably
photograph it?
without you, but without
So,
you know.
so I don't know what book it's in or if it ever got published anywhere, but I signed the rights away. And I remember some photographer came and took photos of my arms. So it was interesting. But that fun story is what inspired me to choose pharmacy. Well, how about a bit later in I finished my undergraduate degree, went to pharmacy school, but every time I worked in a community pharmacy, which I worked weekends at a Walmart pharmacy when I went to UNC, I would work Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Saturday, I would see my eyes get a little watery. Sunday morning, I could not open my eyes. And it was specifically just one of my eyes. I went to optometrists, ophthalmologists, doctors. No one could figure it out, but they figured that I was probably allergic to the sulfa, even just in the air. So in pharmacy school, here I find out I'm allergic to working in retail. And then I did my hospital rotations. I didn't really have to do that until after my second year. And I would get super nervous. I don't know if that was a fear of my past ICU experience, but I was like, I don't like being in the hospital. I don't want to do a residency ever. And so actually it led me to explore non-traditional roles even while I was in pharmacy school, which is very interesting. And so that's what I did. And that led me to just kind of interesting paths and being in the right places in the right time to working at the American Pharmacists Association in book publishing, traditional publishing. I did that for nearly 8 years and then kind of pivoted to what I do today, which is publishing with my own company.
Okay. Well, that's a lot to unpack. So I'm going to pause there for a moment. So pharmacy school, and then a few years fast forward, book publishing. How did you pick in that arena, and I mean, you work for APHA, which is for those that don't know, pharmacy world. It's one of the largest organizations that pharmacists and pharmacy technician can be a part of, and they advocate for professional pharmacy. So it's a very prestigious organization to work for. But more specifically for you, how did you pick book publishing out of everything that pharmacy offers?
Yeah, so I had to really quickly during school realize where my strengths were, where my fears were, and balance what's going to keep me outside of that. And so my dream while I was in pharmacy school was actually to do something in teaching and educating others, being a professor, perhaps something like that. So that was the goal I had. So I sought out mentors in pharmacy school that were doing that. So female or male professors that seemed like I could talk to them and understand what I could do with my career path. It was those mentors that actually created a fellowship for me. It was a very non-traditional fellowship. So right after I graduated pharmacy school for 1 year, so I didn't mention this, but I did a fellowship in the title was Educational Technology Research and Development. Fancy way of saying I, Janan, went to pharmacy school at UNC Eshelman School of Pharmacy. They wanted someone who had gone through that curriculum to work with the professors that had continued to teach that curriculum and work alongside computer programmers and graphic designers and other experts to kind of create learning solutions for pharmacy students. So it kind of was that goal of academia helping, even though I didn't do that much teaching myself, I created educational learning tools. Doing that for a year opened the door and opened the horizon to another professor of mine who had been my mentor, who said, Janan, the American Pharmacists Association, the place you mentioned, they're looking for a pharmacist that has experience in educational technology. They're trying to build their online platform of learning tools, and you should apply. That sounds just like you. And it really sounded like me. And that's what I got in the door doing that. But that was within the book publishing department. So I ended up once again seeking mentors and doing things a little bit beyond my job description because I was curious and I happen to love books. And that's how I learned everything that I do know about publishing.
Wow. Okay. I have some more follow-up questions to that because I think for those who are listening, they're like, so how are you finding these mentors specifically to help you? Like, it seems like everything just fall in place, but I don't think that's the case, right? You intentionally seek out individuals and you know what you want. So it sounds like it falls in place on its own, but I know it's not. So how do you deliberately looking for these mentors to set up like literally a fellowship for yourself, like for you, it seems like, and then get into this position? So how did you find these mentors? And what do you say to them? Like for someone listening to this, they're like, I want to do similar to what you know. Like, what do you say? Who do you come up and what do you say to these individuals for them to say, yes, I'll mentor you along the way?
Absolutely. This is an excellent question. And I know when I hear my story or when I look back at my story, it truly sounds like a story with a beginning, middle, and end and really cool plot. When I was going through all of this, I didn't have everything figured out or anything much figured out other than knowing what I loved. I told you before that I really clearly knew early on, what am I good at? And what am I not good at? What are my strengths and my weaknesses? And so when I knew something was my strength, such as being creative, whether even in terms of studying, even in terms of, I knew something important. And maybe we all know this, whatever career, anyone who's listening, whatever career you're going towards, there's certain things that we need to have as our like resume boosters, right? Oh, it would be really good if you volunteered in an organization or if you did leadership things. Well, I had to get creative because a lot of the organizations within pharmacy that I would have to volunteer in required me either being really close to patients. I didn't mention this, but I have a slight fear also of being too close to patients when it comes to blood. And one of the main things are the organizations that I attended in school or I was a part of, they would do blood pressure screenings or blood glucose checks. And I think that's very important. However, I didn't want to be the one to actually do the blood pressure screenings and so I thought, what can I do with my strengths? Well, I don't know if I mentioned this, but when I say I'm creative, I picked up photography when I was young. I always had a hobby. I actually had in pharmacy school, one of the side hobbies that I did was took photos of my friends, and I bought cameras based on, actually, that was what they would compensate me with, because I didn't want any money. I wasn't that good. I wasn't a professional. But as I got more practice, I think practice makes progress. And so as I got more practice, I joined other clubs and organizations on campus where I attended. So I think the lesson I'm trying to convey here is I knew what I loved. I knew what my strengths were. And so I never went out on a path of, I think I'm going to be a professor. I need to find professor mentors and go up and knock on the door on the professors because that's exactly what I wanted. That's not what I did. I went to these professors and just found reasons that we had things in common, whether it was not even pharmacy related or related to the field, just a way to find common ground. And I will, believe it or not, one of my mentors that became my mentor, and I use that term, it's just a professor that I adored dearly. And I think mentorship means there's someone you can go to openly talk about what you're interested in doing. With a mentor, it's helpful that they're in a position that you want. I was so far away from that I wasn't sure if exactly what they did was what I wanted, but there were other aspects of who they were. Maybe it was a female professor I saw that also had a family. And I just really wanted to know, I want to one day have a family, and I want to balance all of that and be a cool professor like you. How are you doing it? And without spelling it out that way, just kind of finding ways to connect. I think it's all about connections. And so that's what I did. All of these relationships and connections I built, I did not come up with the idea of the fellowship. It was something that I showed through doing other things, through the organizations I was a part of. And I was always very timely, or if I take photos, if I did the photography, or I was the webmaster of an organization, I made sure to do the best that I could. And when people see that, when people see not that I was trying to do my best, but that I'm shining in the creative, non-traditional things that I was good at, it stands out. And I think that was one of the way. Now looking back, that must have been part of why I was able to have those deep connections, but I still stay in touch with many of these professors that I'm talking about. And I think connection and staying connected beyond a specific goal is really important as well.
I think you make a really good point when it comes to mentorship, because I think that's one of my strengths as well, is being able to connect with people. And honestly, I think students or other people are really scared to go up and like, oh, I don't know what to tell them. But kind of like what you mentioned, is more of just talk about what you're good at, or just what you enjoy talking about, right? Like one of my professor, who's not even my teacher, and I admire his teaching style because I just happened to like audit his class. And I would just walk up because I was like, hey, I'm very interested in how you did that class and like what program you're setting up. And then we just start conversation. I see him, I say hi every time, and like go to his office hours, even though I wasn't his student at all, but I would do something like that. So I think it's just finding that commonality, right? Because in the end, we're all human beings. So there's something we can talk about and relate to. And I think that's the key point, is like, don't make it transactional. Like and I think that's, if you make it transactional, you put extra pressure on yourself and like just the relationship itself, where it feels not genuine. And that's where you kind of feel that like stickiness. But if you make it more very conversational and genuine, it's like a flow, like the energy just flowing.
Yes. And I mean, I want to just take a moment and say, you were my mentor unofficially or officially with the organization where we connected. I had joined, I was new. And after our first meeting, and this was the Happy PharmD, you reached out to me and said, Janan, I know you're new. If you have any questions, let's do a Zoom call. And you did that. And I thought that was really, really sweet of you to do for me. So that's a way for someone to mentor others. And you're just naturally great at that. And we connected and we've been in touch. So it's really great to be able to have that connection with you as well.
Oh, thank you. I never thought of it that way, but yes, I think it's just always, it's scary. Like I put myself in other shoes. Like when you start something new, even like in my current job, when someone started new, I'd like, hey, let's do a Zoom or WebEx is what we use. And they're like, did someone ask you to do? Like, no, I know you're new, and I just want to say hi. Like, it's nice to have one friendly person that you can like call to. Like I think that's just natural for me. But I think I'm part of it because I'm paying it forward. Their mentors are people that did that for me. So it's like my way of like pay it forward. So I didn't just come up with the idea, but I know I want to keep the tradition going. And you never know who you impact or touch. So thank you for answering that question about mentorship, because I think a lot of folks are listening to this. I think it's really important for you to find those people, right, in your life and surround yourself with those individuals that can help lift you up.
Yes.
So I know we talked a little bit about the career and then your transitions to publishing and pharmacy. And then now, have you ever made a significant career change or pivot? And then what motivate these decisions specifically?
Yeah, I would say I think the biggest pivot would have been working at that organization, and it was a nonprofit, and then making a decision to actually change that. And I didn't do entrepreneurship will come up right away. I didn't make a decision that, okay, I'm working in this career, I want to do something new. It was more because of 2021, as you remember, the pandemic, and being a mother. I mentioned that I'm a mother as well. I really recognized that I was not taking care of myself or my children as much as I had hoped to. And so I had to decide what was the most important tasks in my day. And when I recognized that a lot of it was being spent in a way that I wasn't able to give back to those that were really precious to me, I knew I had to make some sort of a change. And so I think a big career pivot was making a decision to do something new. Again, for my immigrant parents, they didn't understand how I would be able to go from the end of my career at the American Pharmacist Association. I was the senior director of the books and publishing department. So in charge of employees, in charge of the department, in charge of budget. And it was empowering, it was exciting, but a lot of long hours. And so I made a transition to actually becoming a grant writer. And that's a position I'd never even had before. It was with the medical writing company. It was helpful to have the degree that I have of pharmacy, but huge transition. I actually made this transition thanks to having a leadership coach. You actually know her. It was Nazan Artun. She was my leadership coach. And she also does career coaching as well. And I actually hired her to help me think through the big idea of what is it that are my goals. And I think for any woman listening, or man as well, anyone listening, we have to define what our personal idea of success is. And often I used to be measuring my idea of success compared to someone else. And it wasn't until I defined it for me of what at that point in my life. So back in 2021, when I was looking at what I wanted to contribute to and what I was not able to because of the position I had, that's how I made the decision and why I made the decision. And it was a big one. And it was kind of a small stepping stone for me to be able to take a further leap later onto entrepreneurship.
Wow. And can you kind of walk through, because I think most of the folks who listen may not have a coach. Like, what was your motivation factor to find a coach and work with that coach? And how was your coaching journey?
That's a great question. And coaching is just something that I almost want to say you have to experience it to truly understand, but I will do my best job to articulate how it feels. I believe a coach is someone, specifically if there's a specific area that you're looking for. So right now I was talking about career transitions, for example. A coach is someone who maybe has an idea of where you're trying to go, and they have a good idea about who you are, what your goals are, you're able to articulate them, and they help see something in you. They help you with the potential that you have, with the goal that you have, helping you to get there. A coach asks a lot of questions. You don't get a lot of answers from a coach, but that's what I really needed at this time. You know, if I really redefine what this time was in my life, 3 young children, busy work day, pandemic ongoing, I myself was not able to even assess everything that I was going through at that time. I knew it was a lot. And a coach for me, is able to see the person in front of them. Almost, I like the concept of mirrors and windows. So a coach holds up a mirror. And when they're holding up the mirror, you know, when you see a reflection of yourself, it's the opposite, right? And sometimes you need someone else looking at you to give you feedback, like a coach does, a literal coach, like a sports coach. how does a coach a team? And I think that's the way, if you perceive it, and I'll tell you the truth. I have had, and I actually never understood deeply about coaching until I became a coach, a career coach, which is where we met. But I have had health coaches since then that has helped me with health goals. I've had a business coach later on in my life when I decided I wanted to become an entrepreneur, because that person, whoever the coach is, had a level of expertise and an understanding of what my goal is. And I needed that accountability and that outside perspective to help me get there. And so that's the experience I had with coaching and why I selected a coach. And each of my coaching experiences with different coaches has been phenomenal, remarkable, and I would do it again if I had to.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. Like, I think there's a difference between having mentors who guide you, but have a coach who actually committed to walking you through each step of the way, right? Yes. And every coach is going to have different package, but essentially they work with you so closely that they know you, and then helping you to reflect your own questions so you can come up with those answers yourself. So I thank you for sharing that, because I think I want folks to understand that if you need help, I mean, there's so many different ways to get help. And like nowadays, a lot of DIY, like I'll do it myself, right? Trend, and I'll learn and I'll do all this. But I think it's always nice to have someone to guide you and be there along the way. So I want to switch gear, or not really switching, but my transition back to like, so what inspired you to start your own business? So you kind of talked about, sounds like more of a work-life harmony, and also just being able to control your time to take care of the thriving demand, or the demands that are put in at you as a mom, as an employee, as a, just all these different roles that you're wearing. So what truly inspired you to start your business, and like what lessons have you learned thus far along the way?
Absolutely. You were right on the head on everything that you said. And in some ways, dissatisfied with the way my time was spent, right? And also wanting to actually really recognize and doing that reflection of, where do I have solid experience? Where do I have talent? Where do I have skill? Where do I have interest to put that energy? Because time is our greatest asset. That was what I was really feeling with all those pulls, the demands, being a mother or being an employee, being a wife, being whatever the titles that we have, they pull at us. And so being able to decide and have that ownership of where I'm placing my time in the day, honestly, was one of my biggest inspirations, but also because I wanted to make a change and be a part of a change that I really recognized. And that was really the biggest catalyst. And so the entrepreneurship journey that I went on that started everything is something called Global Bookshelves International. It's a publishing company. And my goal there is really to help raise the underrepresented voices. The dissatisfaction that I had before, I mentioned with time, was a little bit of dissatisfaction with the status quo of the books I was actually able to publish during my time at the American Pharmacist Association. Not anything against the books that were published, but I really did wish that there were other voices or other perspectives I could highlight in different ways. And so that's when you get to create your own rules when you're an entrepreneur. And if you ask, what lessons have I learned along the way? Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. There are ups and downs. There are a lot of, it's an exchange that I do get to control my time, but just because I can control my time does not mean I spend any less time on working, because I was passionate about the work that I did, and I had someone managing my time, right? Or at least a 40-hour work week, if you will. When you're in entrepreneurship, there is no someone, it's you. And so I still have those pulls, and I still see myself breaking the boundaries and not being as disciplined sometimes. And that would be the biggest lesson that I've learned of, just because I have time freedom does not mean that I can still have freedom from time. It's time is still your biggest asset. So you've got to use it wisely.
I think you make a very great point right there. Yeah. So I think in terms of time freedom, it's like you're able to control the time, but you still need to do the work to produce the outcome that, essentially a financial model that works for you and your family. Because in the end, you have to make money.
Yes.
And I think that can be a stressor. And like you said, it's not for the faint of heart. And it's true. It's like, it's not, it's not as glorious as folks put out to be, but it's because you have to know your why. And I think
Yes.
you went through such an extent, soul searching, what I would call it, to really understand your why. So even in the hardest moments, you're like, no, I'm doing this and I'm doing it for the right reason. And I think that's really important for anyone to hear this. I'm an entrepreneur myself. And I think there are days I'm like, honestly, one of my worst or weakest is financial and accounting and that piece, but it's so important.
Yes.
So I think it's just being able to control your time. However, you got to be accountable for the time that you put in. And it's not 40-hour, right? Like once you being able to turn off your brain to like not think about certain things after quote 40 hours, because it's never 40 hours, it's always
Yeah.
more. It's
Right.
always more. I don't
Yes.
know if you have the same feelings of like you don't really do 40 hours, like whatever time that comes up and thoughts, you have to like jot it down and just get things executed.
Yes. And as women, we have so many great ideas, right? And we want to take them and run with it. And being disciplined, as you're saying, with time, and then also with the ideas, there's shiny object syndrome of, ooh, now I'm on my own. I can do whatever I want. I should chase this and chase that. And you can look around and you've been running a lot. You've been running around a lot. And as you said earlier, what work is getting done and what bills are getting paid. And I think for women who are from the academic world, if anyone's listening that, did do a lot of academia, they went to school, and you're very giving. A lot of women are very, very giving with their time, giving with their energy. When it comes to being an entrepreneur, you have to really make a mindset shift change of, I can't give everything away. People will ask, and you can give a lot, and it will be very nice, and you can be very kind and a great entrepreneur. But once again, kindness will not necessarily pay the bills, right? And so being able to understand what that means, what is the business model? Do you have a strong foundation? It is really important, because a lot of times people, as you're saying, it's glamorized. Oh, I can escape and I can completely control my time. Why work for a corporation or whatever when you can work for yourself? But just knowing what that means, what that truly means, and having a firm foundation for that is really important.
Yeah, and I agree. I think one more point to that is like if you say yes to something, you're saying inherently saying no to something, right? Like,
Yes.
as all the clients I'm coaching, I think it's so important. They're like, well, it's just another 30-minute or another hour. Well, that's another 30-minute hour in your 24-hour, and time is the only thing. So sometimes what I find the woman I coach is it ends up they're suffering or sacrificing their own self-care or
Yes.
their own sleep or their own mental health or whatever that is because they're trying to do everything else. Um, so I think that kind of pivot to like the next questions, like what are some of the biggest challenge that you faced as a woman in your field of publishing, and then did you overcome them or still overcoming them?
I think something interesting that I think of is the idea of biases, and we all face them in different ways. I will tell you the truth. When I first started at my first job, I feel that I experienced something that usually is attributed to a different group of people. So have you heard of age bias before?
No.
So age bias is typically defined of discrimination if someone is too old in the job world, like that kind of bias of
Okay.
maybe an HR department might not hire someone because they're too old for the job. They won't be able to keep up with the technology or something like that. That's the typical example if you look up a textbook definition of age bias for what kind of discrimination it is. However, I'll tell you an interesting answer to this question is I feel like I faced age bias, but as being too young, because I have a youthful face. I've heard I have a small stature.
Age well.
I'm not even, I'll be honest and just share because people, this is really funny. I did not meet a lot of people clearly during the pandemic, and a lot of my transitions happened during the pandemic. So there were jobs that I took. I had one job, the job that I mentioned being a grant writer. It was remote. I never met most of the people in real life. It was all done on Zoom or Teams and everything like that. And eventually at some other event, I ended up meeting someone, and they were so surprised to see me in real life because, again, I'm not ashamed of this at all, but I'm not even 5 feet tall. I'm 4 feet 9 inches. So I'm petite. And what that really, going back to the what challenge did I face, is that being young, being youthful, being bite-sized, or these are the types of words I would hear, and it's hard to be taken seriously sometimes when you're in person or whatever the case. Being too young can be something that has happened. I think this happens not just to me, to other women as well. And so, how did I overcome this? My suggestion and how I did it was just know your stuff. Be confident. Confidence can shine. It's okay if someone says something, and I think being humorous and being able to take things and not take things too seriously and being easily offended is not going to be for me. I tried to let go and say, okay, this is me. I understand people might have these comments or these thoughts. That's fine. I'm going to take the positive from it. And then just turn it around and say, what am I confident in myself? What do I know? They can say all that and I can laugh. And then I can go back to saying, all right, what business are we talking about? And people may still continue to perpetuate that whatever the issue is, if you're too young or not inexperienced. I heard a lot of those types of things that, oh, what would you know? You haven't done this for long enough. I would hear those kind of things from people that were senior to me, right? And so I think the other asset that I brought very boldly would be like, yeah, I have experience from a different perspective than you and than others in this room. And I think you should take a listen to what I think it might help. And so not being afraid of being able to share your perspective if you are different. The expression that I love is, if all the fish are swimming one way, right, in a school of fish, the one that's going to get noticed is the fish that's swimming the other way. So yeah, you're swimming against the grain. It feels hard. It's tough. Everyone's going that way, but sometimes going the other way gets you opportunities. Sometimes it gets you noticed. And so that's my response.
No, I think that's a really good point. So when I say, have you heard of that? It's like, yeah, no, but I think in a way I've experienced something, right?
Yes.
Well, like for HR, I know all the discrimination, like age, sex, all that. So I know of it, but in terms of like, if I heard stories from others, if they've experienced it, I would say no. But kind of funny story, but not really funny, right? But I experienced something similar to you because, again, I look very young.
Yes.
I'm 5'2". It's 5'1" and something. I call myself 5'2". So I do look young. And in my previous job, I was a manager over 45 people.
Yes.
And many of them are twice my age or older. And I would come in and they're like, who is this chick that coming in and manage the whole operations?
Right.
But I agree with what you're saying in terms of know your stuff. And what I usually do is when I go, especially in my first 90 day, or even when I walk into a meeting that I don't know a lot of people, I listen. I listen intently.
Yes.
And then when I speak, they're like, oh, she knows her stuff. That's my strategy, because I don't go in and like trying to show off, like, oh, I did this and that. Like, no, I'm not that person at all, but I'm gonna listen intently and building connection like crazy. And that has always been my principle. It's like I walk in, it's like clean slate. Like I start from the ground up. And I think people really appreciate that. The credibility that you build and like the connection, and I live by this principle, people don't care about what you know until they know how much you care, by Eleanor Roosevelt. And I live and I love that quote, and because I live by it. So I think kind of going back to your point, like even with this, because I do get that you're too young, like, because I manage people that are twice my age, or someone's like, oh, she just got her residency and all these letters after her name, right? But I'm like, no, I'm not letting that as part of I come in and like, I'm a clean slate. Like, tell me what you guys are doing. How can I help? And I think coming in with a genuine, like, you care, like you want to make a difference in whatever operations or projects you want to run. And I think that really helps to build relationship. And I listen intently. Like I come in, I don't say anything until when I'm like, I drop a thing and they're like, oh. So I agree. I think it's over. And the important part you're saying to like speak up, right? Like, and make humor out of it. Like, how my personality, but like I do definitely leverage humor or really building a connection through that way. So I think those are all different things that we can do to help, but then also bring up like, no, I think, with this thing, I can help you in that manner because of the experiences, like the vast experience that we all bring. So for those listening out there, I hope whoever encounter things like that, I think you just take it one step at a time. Don't take it personally. I think that's the first thing. Like, don't take it personally and be intentional about how you can make an impact.
Yes, definitely.
So I know we talked a lot about transitions and starting your own business. Talk to me a little bit more on how are you doing with work-life harmony, like integrating your professional responsibilities with your personal life. You touch a little bit on being a mom of 2, 3 and a wife and all this responsibility. So what's your magic potion?
So I think that's a really great question. And the magic potion is being able to plan. And planning just means it's a very relative term. It doesn't mean that I have every second of the day planned, not at all. But a quote, you mentioned a quote that you really liked by Eleanor Roosevelt. I don't know who said this one, so I'd love to find out, but it's failure to plan is planning to fail. One of my an advisor or someone in my past said that, and it really stuck with me. So failure to plan is planning to fail. And what that means to me is that we all have a calendar. We all know that we have all these things, including how much sleep we're going to have every night, and we're going to eat, and we have work, and we have responsibilities here and there to our friends. If you don't actually loosely, again, I'm saying you don't have to plan out every single thing and have a time slot for it, but in order to make time for all the things and the responsibilities and the things that we're saying, because balance is so important, right? You have to actually make a general map, because our lives are a consequence of the habits and the actions that we take every day. And so if you say and think in your mind that, oh, I'm going to, meal plan, I'm going to eat all these freshly cooked meals. And then you think that, but then you haven't scheduled any time for doing that. At the end of the day, you worked a whole day, whatever that job, whatever your thing is. And maybe you play and you do self-care and all of that. And then you come, it's like, okay, it's dinner time. If you didn't plan to have the food and you're like, oh, I haven't done the grocery shopping and what does that mean of having this freshly cooked meal? There's some planning involved. And that's with anything that you're planning to do or want to do. I don't want to say plan. I can't define it in the same sentence, but if you want to have something happen in your life, so that answer of if you want to balance your life, your professional responsibilities and your personal responsibilities, you have to plan when and how that's going to happen. And I'm not saying you need to have home cooked meals. Maybe that night's pizza night, but you learn from that night that if I want to cook, that's a lesson for you that, okay, if I want a home cooked meal, I need to figure out when am I going to make the time to go to the grocery store? When am I going to make the time to figure out how and when I'm going to cook this? Because I have this until this time. And if you really did it, it won't be midnight before you're eating dinner, right? So just kind of thinking of it like that. That's been how I've been able to manage, by planning and learning from them mistakes when there were nights where I didn't execute a plan, and kind of adjusting along the way.
Yeah, I think that speaks so loudly to me right now, because I am a planner, always in heart, but I mean, there are definitely days that like, oh, whoops, I kind of like, even today, this is my green smoothies because I need some greens in me, right? So
Right.
I totally agree with planning. And I think part of it too, don't get stressed out about planning, right? Like, don't do it by like minute, but at least have an idea of what that week looks like. And if Sunday is your day to prep for the whole week because you know your calendar, then have something in there. And it's kind of in leadership 101. If it matters, you measure and you monitor. So whatever priorities that matters to you, you put in your calendar or whatever that you put it because you want to make it count. Because if not, then you start losing track of it. So I really love the book Atomic Habits, because I think he really talks about how to build healthy habits and stacking it, right? Like if you want to say you read for 10 minutes every day and you can't find time to read, what is the next thing? Like, do you brush your teeth every day? Do you go to bed with your phone every day? Like, what is that can stack on top of each other?
Yes.
And I think another thing with too is like asking for help.
Right.
My slogan this year is that I can have it all, but I don't have to do it all.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you build a tribe of people. Like, full disclosure, I'm not a great cook at
Sure.
all. I'm not a great cook. I have two young toddlers, and thank goodness they're such easy eaters. So, but
Oh,
I get help from my sisters. They bring in me food, and I'm like, thank you. And that would last
yes.
me for a few days. And so I would cook like once or twice a week. And I would try to do meal prep like on Sunday or Saturday for the whole entire week, knowing that I would get some subsidized meal from other people.
Yeah.
So, surround yourself with a tribe of people that can help, or even professional helpers, right? Cleaners.
Yes.
So you don't have to clean your own toilet. I don't.
Right.
So
Right.
that's one of the things I do not like cleaning. So I outsource that. So being able to really look what kind of going back to the very original thing that you said, what you're good at and what you're not good at, and like what
Yeah.
you like and what you don't like. Like I enjoy eating. I don't necessarily care for the process of cooking. So I love to
Yeah.
outsource that anyway, or cleaning. Um, Next thing will be laundry, but I'll deal with that later.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if there's a way, it's going back to what you were saying about like time. Like it's if you can spend 2 hours every however often and cleaning the whole house, or 2, 3 hours, or if you can take that 2 to 3 hours of quality time, whether it's with your children or with somebody special, and if you have the means to afford to pay that, I mean, that's a great way. Time is the most valuable right now. So I think it's really important to make those decisions and make them wisely. So I love it. Yeah.
So yeah, thank you. And I think just also to your point, plan, plan, plan. And it's okay to, because one of my coaching client, I was like, how do I want my free Sunday. And I told her, you need to plan on not doing anything. That's
Yes.
also really
Yes.
important.
Yes.
If you're not wanting to do anything, you need to plan, or else things will start piling up on your calendar. So
Yeah.
it's kind of counterintuitive. Like, I don't want to do anything. I have to plan for it. Like, yes, you do.
Yeah. Block it off or
Block
whatever is
it off.
possible.
Yeah, exactly. Like in the morning, I wake up an hour before my kids, and that's I call it
Me
jam
too.
section. So
Yes.
journaling, exercise, meditation, and massage. Like that's my self-care on a daily basis. So whatever that works for you, that's what you need to do, right?
Yes.
So what strategies do you use to stay empowered and motivated, especially in challenging times as an entrepreneur, or when you were working as in your professional life?
It's the main thing is journaling for me. And that could be, sometimes it's on the phone, sometimes it's in a physical journal. I have an iPad as well with a pencil. And it's to acknowledge and celebrate my small and big achievements, because that helps me boost my confidence and gain motivation. It's very easy for us to measure, again, that idea of success or not success based on, maybe it's how big as an entrepreneur, how big my bank account is right now, or success based on, social media or silly things. Sometimes those things are like, oh, I'm a failure. We can easily come into our brain, but you have to understand, where is your equity? And again, maybe my equity in sometimes is how many people I've helped or how many people I've supported. For me, it's book publishing. So in their book publishing journey, it might not translate exactly in dollar bills or something else, but because entrepreneurship's a journey, as I mentioned, but being able to celebrate those small achievements are absolutely the way that I stay motivated, especially in times where I feel any lack, or someone says something, or not allowing that to get to me, being able to replenish myself and remembering what I have to be grateful for, because we all have so much to be grateful for. And then for me, it really takes the worries and the troubles and the complaints away when I am able to articulate the things that I have gratitude towards.
Thank you for sharing that. Do you have like a prompt on your journal? Because I think sometimes folks they hear about journaling and meditation is such a good thing to do, but they sometimes struggle on, what do I write? Like, do you have prompts that you use in your journal? I do, but I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, I have used several different kinds. One of them that I have is actually called Winning is in My DNA. It's like a winning journal. It was made by a pharmacist. Her name is Sandra Anye, but it simply says, list no matter how big or small, list 10 things you're grateful for today. And so it's a daily practice. So that's one that I'll go back to, especially what I love to do is go back to that after some time, because I can go back and read the things that I was grateful for a week ago or so. I've done other meditation practices or writing, journaling practices. One thing that I do every week is the circle of life. If you're familiar with that, basically it's like, imagine a pizza, an image of a pizza with slices, and each slice, so I have 8 slices on my pizza. Each of the 8 slices are the 8 most important things to me right now. And so on a scale of 0 being in the middle of the center of the pizza to 10 being at the crust of the pizza, how do I feel I'm doing on these 8 things? And the reason I do this exercise is really to be that, what you were saying, I really loved what you said in leadership. It was the measurement part of how am I doing? If these are things that I say are really important in my life, I need to be able to measure how well I'm doing at this point in time. And what I do is I reflect from the last time I assessed this. And sometimes it's hard truth. Like, okay, health-wise, like let's say the week that I ate pizza every day because I didn't have time to cook or whatever. I'm just giving a funny example. But if I'm saying health is a really, really big, important thing of mine, and home cooked meals and having fresh organic food is on my list, but I'm acknowledging that I ate pizza and leftover pizza every day, then I can't give myself a 10 out of 10. What this does is it brings attention to, it's called a wheel of life, because a wheel has to, in order to roll, to move, it's got to be round. So if I have a really low there, I'm going to have a flat tire in that one section, or the pizza, the slice is missing, kind of thing. So what it helps me do is not beat myself up. It's saying, okay, how can I be just a little bit better next time? What can I do to improve this? And something somewhere else that I have a 10 out of 10, I can kind of let go of that a little bit and say, you know what, this can drop down to a 9, 8, a 7, even to a 5, because this other one's at 0. And I need to, and you said this, for anything that you're saying yes to, we're saying no to something else. So clearly it also makes me reflect on my week before. And so this is a very visual, very simple, easy way for me to journal. It's just a circle with to make a pizza, and this kind of shading in how high and low. And I don't even write anything about it. I just keep it at that circle, and I've graded myself in a way. And that's a really quick, easy way for me to assess. And then I can look back at it the next week and see how it's increased or decreased or changed or anything like that.
Wow, I love that. So I'm aware of that, and I actually only do it like once every 3 or 6 months. So I like that we do it on a daily basis, because
weekly,
or weekly on
yes.
That's very powerful. So what are your 8 categories on your wheel of life?
So some of these shift a little bit, but in for the most part, it's parenting. Sometimes the shift is I actually have made different wedges or slices for each child, because I tend to over care about one and forget I have a middle child. So sometimes it's right. It happens. You forget. So anyway, but parenting, one's about related to faith. I have one for health, one for my work, my main work. And then I have for each of the different businesses or different aspects that I'm working on, then my relationship with my family or loved ones, and friendships.
I love that. No. And like, if anyone who listens to this, you can circle or Google circle of life or wheel of life. It will show up, and there's different categories, and you can make adjustment how you need it to be. One of the things I did very early, actually started last year in 2023, was Life Book by My Valley, and it goes into 12 categories.
Yes.
And honestly, doing that exercise, I literally have, I don't have it with me, but I usually do. I have a book of all the things, like talk about my visions and where I am at. And so it's something that I appreciate, and that's how I learn about Wheel of Life. And I really like your weekly things. I think I'm going to try to integrate that into my journaling. But yeah, that is so powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think for me, I try to do it daily, but when I don't, and I don't beat myself up, I don't journal daily, I would just compile to like a weekly, and I just write like things I'm grateful for personally and professionally. Yes. What is my visions the next 3 years? What 3 things I need to do that make it a successful day, right? Yes. And I really like what you said. One more point is regarding like, what does success look like for you? Because I think sometimes we lose track of what that looks like because we just let others say, what does that look like for us and
Yes.
how we compare. It's so easy to compare. And I fell into that trap too. Like, I did this residency. I should be by now a director, but I'm at a manager level, and I'm like, wait a minute. But I'm doing something different, kind of non-traditional compared to my peer. So I think the compare game can get really dicey, and being able to be aware of that. And even entrepreneurship, right? Like, you meet other coaches and like, oh, they're doing this much and all this stuff and da da da. And I'm like, and I'm here. And I was like, no, but everyone start their journey at a different pace, and you're unique in your own way, and you just got to go whatever works for you. So
exactly.
So yeah, define your own success. What does that look like for you, and not let others do it for you. So I really like what you said there. So I want to conclude with the last questions. What advice would you give to women who are just starting out in their careers, or are even considering moving into having their own business?
I think you really hit a lot of these through our discussion, but I think it would start with make sure you can define your short-term goals and your long-term goals. So you were just saying this about what is your goal? What are you working on right now? What are you working on 1 year, 3 year, 5 years? And as we were saying, if those are your goals, what are you doing? What are the things that you're doing, the habits that you have, or the actions that you're taking that are getting you towards those goals? I think that's really, really key. And it goes alongside this idea of envisioning the life that you want to have, right? What is that life in the 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, or even 6 months? What version of yourself do you want to be? And then slow down, pause, do that planning to determine the steps that you have to personally take to get there. Anything is possible, whether it's being an entrepreneur completely, starting with a side hustle, nothing to do with entrepreneurship, and 100% staying in the career game. All of these are noble. Everyone makes choices. And so no matter what choice you make, be sure in it and allow that reflection of who you want to be later to help guide you. Because I still am not sure exactly what 5, 10, 20 years are. I have a dream and I have a goal. And sometimes that can change too. I might, I have a dream right now. I want to be moving and shaking and doing things all around the world. But maybe at one point I'll change and pivot direction. But at least I can be proud of every day that I'm taking the steps and the directions and the company of others that are going to help me get there, including you, Anne. I'm so glad we are doing this. Yeah.
Yes. I know. The reason we came up with this idea was we did a LinkedIn event together for Women in Workplace, and we're like, hey, let's jump on and have more deep dives. So hence, you never know what you cross and the collaboration you get in this world. So with that, how do folks who want to connect with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Okay, I hope my internet is stable, and apologies if not, but I am Janan Sarwar on LinkedIn. You can find me there, or my website is bookjanan, bookjanan.com. I'd be happy to connect with anyone, and I really, again, appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And again, for everyone, please hit a subscribe button and comment on what you want to, who you want to bring in, so I can definitely reach out, or what things you have learned today. One thing that you learned from Janan today. She dropped so many golden nuggets. I hope you do take away and learn one thing from her. I am a success coach, a mix of mindset and leadership coach, and I help women to be a leader in their personal and professional lives. And my goal is to really gain clarity and confidence in your life priorities so you can have a thriving life. So with that, thank you so much. Until next episode. Take care.